Did the Dallas Cowboys make a mistake waiving Isaiah Land? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
To the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, the Dallas Cowboys are down to 53 players on their active roster. They filled, I believe, every spot on the practice squad. But the story here is the Cowboys waived undrafted free agent Isaiah Land, who was claimed by the Indianapolis Colts. Did the Cowboys make a mistake by not keeping Land on the 53-man roster?
I mean, I think it's easy for us to second guess this, right? Like, we talk about it all the time, how it's pretty rare when, Cowboys lose a guy or teams in general lose guys, going through waiver wires. Having said that, Isaiah Land had an incredible preseason. And the Cowboys, as much as people, are quick to say, hey, when was the last time the Cowboys lost someone that they wanted to retain? I mean, the answer is last year. Like, they let Ridgeway go and he got picked up with Washington and he played some decent snaps for him. I mean, I'm not suggesting that it was that it didn't work out for the Cowboys and that they weren't okay, but
they lost an NFL contributor.
It's incremental. It's stuff like this is incremental. So, next season, if you are looking at DeMarcus Lawrence potentially retiring, or you got no Fowler, you've suddenly the numbers have changed at the defensive, the pass rusher position. It would have been nice to kind of had Isaiah Land still on the roster, to still be available to kind of develop. So, I mean, I think it's easy to second guess here. It's easy to kind of look at the situation and think that maybe they made a mistake. We could talk about the Jordan Lewis pup situation again if we need to, but
we don't have to. We don't.
Well, I will say this. Let me just add this real quick. The fact, since this happened after the pod last time, the fact that they were looking to trade Kelvin Joseph, like that was looking like they were looking to get rid of Kelvin Joseph.
Yeah.
Knowing that now, I mean, I guess it makes a little bit more sense to do what they did with Jordan Lewis in the pup situation, because if they didn't feel like they could trust him, now it's still a serious gamble. You still all the things that we said about his injury and the veteran coming off of that kind of injury still apply. But I think it's also easy to look at that situation the way we talked about it, and then look over at Isaiah Land in a Colts uniform and say, there was a solution here that could have kept Isaiah Land on this team.
Am I allowed to have mixed feelings and say that I have mixed feelings about this whole situation?
That's exactly how I feel. Like I hate that I lost Isaiah Land. I hate that they didn't use the pup situation. I'm thrilled that Jordan Lewis is back. I'm thrilled that Jordan Lewis is on the team. Like, I think that's where I'm at, is that I feel a lot of different ways about it.
Yeah, I'll just add a couple things here for Isaiah Land. I'm happy for him, like as an undrafted free agent, to make somebody's 53-man roster is really cool. I'm also bummed out for the Cowboys because it's clear they liked him a lot. That's why they gave him, was it $220,000 guaranteed as an undrafted free agent? That's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
And what I would love to have him, kind of down the pipeline, ideally on a practice squad, so you could have him potentially replace a Dorrance Armstrong or Dante Fowler next year. Absolutely. At the same time, Dan Quinn and the Cowboys are pretty good about finding defensive ends. Like, if you need a fourth and fifth defensive end, like, they're going to find projects. They didn't keep Ben Bagnew, right? He didn't make the active roster, but whether that's a Tack McKinley, who they had at points last year, or Dante Fowler, who they brought in last year as this kind of reclamation project. Like, if they need to get somebody to fill out that last defensive end spot on the roster, I'm not concerned. But again, I liked Isaiah Land. I thought he did a lot in the preseason to get me excited. But at the same time, I don't think he was somebody that was going to contribute at all for you this year. And even if you watch that last preseason game, like there's some nice rushes, but he's still a long ways away.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is definitely a long-term play situation, right?
But if you're the Colts, this is perfect. You're not competing this year anyway. So accumulate as many of these players as possible. So I get that at the same time as well.
Oh, yeah. I totally get it for both of them. I mean, I get it for the Colts, why they didn't. I get it for Isaiah Land. I mean, obviously, to be made an active roster after all that is incredible. So, and he earned it. He had a great preseason.
I'm happy for him. I wish the Cowboys could have found a way to keep him on the practice squad.
Yeah.
He's too good for the practice squad. The NFL just told you he's too good to be on a practice squad right now. So the best of luck to him. I want to talk about the Jabril Cox situation because this one, listen, I am a Jabril Cox fan. I loved when the Cowboys drafted him in the 4th round. I was so bummed when he had that ACL injury. Mike McCarthy talked about how hard it was for, those kind of players to come back. But what was so obvious, even though I don't necessarily agree or like it, is that he was just behind Malik Jefferson on the depth chart, right? And even if you didn't make the 53-man roster, it was Jefferson who was going to be activated, as that last linebacker on the team rather than Jabril Cox. And I think Jabril Cox knew that. And that's why he decided not to stay with the Cowboys practice squad after clearing waivers. It's just his pathway to snaps in Dallas. Well, they were pretty blocked despite it not looking like there's a lot of linebackers on this team.
Yeah, I mean, I like Jefferson, but I never understood that whole thing, honestly. I mean, I think it has something to do with the fact that Jefferson might be just a little bit more of a thumper, and that he could probably handle
size,
hold up a little bit more inside. But as far as valuable, like I understand that Cox still, hadn't quite gotten to where he needed to be yet, but like you just don't find a ton of linebackers that can cover running backs out of the backfield the way he does. So I was a little bit surprised by that. I'm was surprised that he didn't get signed to the practice squad. But then when we found out he went to another team, I was like, well, I guess he kind of saw the writing on the wall too.
Or he knew, it maybe because we saw the report from Michael Galkin that the Cowboys wanted him back, but I'm guessing he knew, like, there's Van Der Esch, there's Damone Clark, there's Devin Harper, who all made the 53. Marquise Bell is transitioning to be a linebacker. They already
used his number.
They already used Jay Runkhurst as a linebacker.
Yeah.
And then you've got Malik Jefferson, who they clearly liked, who was playing ahead of Jabril Cox in the preseason.
And he never got
the path to snaps just wasn't there for Jabril, and it bums me out.
Yeah, it does. It bums me out too. And I'm still a little confused by the love of Jefferson over Cox. And I like Jefferson. I think he's fine, but
I don't get it either. But
I think there's some upside there. Yeah, I mean, kind of hard to argue with Dan Quinn at this point.
Especially when you're talking about once you factor in all the safeties that play linebacker, like your 8th box defender, 7th or 8th box defender.
And look, this isn't a case where Cox was too undersized for Cox is too undersized for to play linebacker. For me, this is Dan Quinn we're talking about. He's played with 200-pound linebackers as far as I know. So yeah, like I think this is just a situation where they wanted him, they liked him, but they clearly didn't like him as much as Jefferson. Cox really truly recognized that and thought he had a better shot at another team.
As somebody who used to be a former middle school social studies teacher, this is a we like you, but we don't like you situation for the Cowboys in Jabril Cox. So that's why they decided to move on. All right, let's talk about who did make the Cowboys practice squad and some of the more interesting names on the list next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, and this is the one I really, really like, and I've already done it. All customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. I just signed up for YouTube TV in the last 2 weeks. Absolutely love it. If you can get $100 off your Sunday ticket, why not? Go do it. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can be on everything from spreads to player props to futures bets, which I absolutely love, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Everydayers. On tomorrow's show, we're going to be answering your Twitter questions, so make sure that you send them in. We'll talk about the roster. We'll talk about looking forward to week 1 against the Giants. So make sure you send them in to me at Marcus_Mosier. But Landon, I want to talk about this practice squad for the Cowboys. I think it's basically full right now. A lot of the guys that we were hoping to see on the on the practice squad did make it. Who are 1 or 2 names that kind of stick out to you on this practice squad?
Well, I think the fact that they were able to get Malik Davis back was great. I wasn't totally shocked about it, but I mean, I think the fact that you get another running back that you can rely on, that you're not having to call in from a cold necessarily if something goes wrong. I think it's, I preferred Dowdle. I think that was clear, and I think that he's earned that spot, but that doesn't mean that we don't like Malik Davis. I think he has something to him. Needs to clean up some pass protection stuff, but
He's an NFL running back.
Yep, absolutely, and he deserves to potentially, be a part of this team.
I'll go another one. My guy Sean McEwen, who very much seems like somebody who could be an early elevation for them. Right, play in week 1, play some fullback, play on special teams. Not that I had any doubt that he was going to get claimed or anything like that, but I'm glad to see the Cowboys brought him back because I think that's a valuable spot. If you can keep a 4th tight end on your roster, or on the practice squad, and bring him up and down, I think that's a nice little roster mechanism they can pull here.
Also, a guy that has had really good practice last few weeks, and his nickname I love to say, Tyrant Uncle Baby Billy Johnson,
former Las Vegas Raider.
Yeah, that's right. As a guy that has NFL experience, right, and has played on an NFL field before. So if you have some injuries and the lower spots at wide receiver, and you need someone to come up and maybe take a couple of snaps as a wide receiver, but mostly play some special teams, I think that he could be a guy that could be really interesting. I mean, all these names are names that we mostly know, but we should talk about some of these names that we don't know, right? Like the guys that came in, like Sean Harlow. He's a swing interior guy who came in from the Giants. He's actually bounced around a little bit between, I think it's Atlanta, Arizona, and New York. And he had some good years. It sounds like. I'm going to be honest, I haven't watched a ton of tape yet. I'm going off PFF grades, which how those guys are. But Sean Harlow had some good years with Arizona. It sounds like he is a bit undersized. What I did see of him. He does look a little bit, he's 284 and he looks it, right? So I do wonder if he might be a option really for center only if something were to happen. And then, if there's a guard, they'll let TJ Bass handle it. And then obviously we can't go any further without speaking about venerable, well-known defensive tackle who I'm pretty sure is also a lord of some tract of land in England as well, Willington Pavilion. From the University of Rutgers.
I love that we have a Willington on our team. This is fantastic.
Willington. It's Sir Willington. We have a Sir Neville Gallimore and a Sir Willington Prevalent. So two fine British gentlemen
being coached by
being coached by Andre Dirty. Yeah. So it's quite a they have cups of tea. They have tea time in the defensive line room. He's a guy that just based on what limited I've seen. It's kind of an explosive 3 technique, up the field 3 technique type. He's still very raw. Doesn't even look like he knows that he has hands. But he can
as I say, with Neville Gallimore being on the last year of his rookie deal, maybe this is somebody that you stash and you just see what he looks like next year at training camp if you decide not to bring back Gallimore.
Yeah, he's a big dude too. He's he's 6'5", 295. I mean, so he's not like weight wise huge, but he's tall and he's got some height to him, some length. So maybe he's kind of closer to a Chauncey Golston type as far as what type of player he is. So it should be interesting to see what he does.
I want to just mention a couple other players really quickly from the undrafted free agent class. Earl Bostic Jr., who we talked about this when the Cowboys signed him out of Kansas. He needs a lot of development. Like the tools and the traits are there, but he needs like a year or 2 in a practice squad. I'm excited the Cowboys are, if you got him here, they're going to be able to develop him. Jalen Moreno-Cropper, the receiver from Fresno State, flashed a little bit in training camp, but wasn't consistent enough. I do want to point out some names that aren't on this list that I find very fascinating. Let's go through a couple of them. Dennis Houston, Cowboys, from what I've heard, wanted him back, didn't get him back. He decides to go to the Giants, which I find fascinating because the Giants have a lot of receivers that are of that kind of caliber. So I don't know how he fits in.
Yeah.
You want to comment on Dennis Houston before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that this is a situation where the Giants offered him a little bit of money to. Well, I mean, they signed him basically, and they probably offered him a little bit of money just to come in and give them some, operational information. But we'll see how useful that is, honestly.
Semi Fehoko did not get a practice squad basically invite from the Cowboys. I believe it was yesterday that he's visiting the Steelers today. His brother actually is on the practice squad for the Steelers, but just another one. Like, this is somebody who was on the 53-man roster last year who didn't get a practice squad invite a year later.
It feels like with both him and Joseph, they went through the process of, we've given you enough chances.
Like, hey, we're in year 3 now and it hasn't happened.
We should have seen it more consistently at this point. So and I get it. Like, I was probably willing to give Joseph another year. Semi Fehoko, I think it was too crowded at the end. But I think it's just one of those situations where he just didn't develop quick enough that you wanted, and you've run out of kind of contract time. So it's just time to move forward.
And then another one that I find really fascinating is somebody who started games last year for you, Matt Farniak. You go from an NFL starter to not even getting a practice squad invite. And I don't believe he has signed with a team yet. So we've got to be missing something here, because that just seems like that seems too strange for me. And
I got to say, man, like, I cannot believe that they would keep Hoffman over Farniak. Like,
there's nothing in the game tape that suggests that they're close.
Farniak, it has moments where he looks like Hoffman, and Hoffman looks like Hoffman all the time. Look, I respect the guy. Like, he's a grinder, he's tough, he's scrappy. I love all of those things, but come on, man. Like, I don't know. Like, it just
that's why there's got to be something else going on we're missing here. Because if you're just evaluating based on the tape and the practices, they're not close. But maybe it's the same thing that we just got done talking about with Fehoko and Kelvin Joseph. It's like, hey, we've given you 3 years, and this, you kind of are what you are. We're going to churn our practice squad now to get some different faces in here to see what you have.
Yeah, maybe it's a traits thing, right? Like, like I said, he's tough. He's probably smart. He's playing center a lot. He's scrappy. Maybe you feel like you can get his strength and his balance into a place where he can unlock his athleticism a little bit better. But dude, I'm going to hold my breath if he ever has to get in as a center in any of these games. Like, you definitely are hoping that Sean Harlow is the backup center on this team.
Yeah. And last one for me, Princeton Fant made the practice squad.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, he was not very good in the preseason. I don't think he was very good in training camp. But he needs some time. He's really transitioning to a new position. I just want to see what he looks like in year 2. And if by year 2 it doesn't happen, it's fine. You move on. It's no big deal.
Yeah, I think it's fair. He's got some good athleticism to him. He's a different type of player a little bit. Different kind of size, body type. Maybe you can get some time with him to develop him into more of a fullback role, right? More of an H-back role. Maybe he becomes kind of, maybe you codify a little bit the Lipke role, right? And then this guy becomes like a backup to the Lipke role
on the practice squad, right? That way you don't have to completely take out those 17 plays that you have designed for Lipke, every game.
Only 17? Okay, yeah. No.
Okay, 17 snaps. I should write the 17 snaps that you have planned out for Lipke. Like, you don't have to completely scrap those, right?
They should be doing 30 to 35 plays, run through Lipke. Lipke should be the main part of this offense.
In case you guys didn't know, Landon McCool was signed by Hunter Lipke to be his agent moving forward. Right. So now that he's on. That's right. Let's talk about what's next for the Dallas Cowboys and what spots they still need to fill on this roster. All right, Landon, the Cowboys have just over a week until week 1 of the season is here. For the most part, the roster is set. But is there one or maybe even 2 spots that you could see the Cowboys going out and either signing a veteran, making a waiver claim, pulling somebody off a practice squad? Like, what do you see going on here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there still could be a move or 2, like if someone comes loose that they like. I would say that as it stands right now, I would bet that they think they're done, right? Like I would bet that this is what they have anticipated to be doing. I think anything that comes from here until the Giants game, right, is a surprise release that they got caught off guard by, that someone they liked, or someone that they potentially were waiting to kind of fall out of team because of roster mechanisms, or sign a veteran, right? Yeah, that's the other thing, right? Because we are not technically still in week 1.
Yeah.
So the if you guys remember, everydayers have heard this all the time from us. Your veteran contracts are guaranteed if you sign them before week 1. If you sign them after week 1, they aren't guaranteed. So that's why you see a lot of these teams wait to get into the practice week of week 1 in order to sign some of these street free agents, because it's just you lose obviously the ability for some of them to play in the first week depending on who they are. But you also gain the ability of not having to guarantee them money just in case they get injured, and that's usually the issue with the guys that are on the street at this point, right? They're older. You're just not sure if you pay them guaranteed money that they're going to play the length of the contract, that sort of thing. So those are the kind of moves that I would look out for once we get to Monday of next week. Do the Cowboys bring in any veterans? Maybe a swing tackle, maybe an offensive lineman.
Well, and that was going to be my other comment before we go, is the Cowboys did put Matt Waletzko on the injured reserve list, meaning he's out for the first 4 games of the season. Probably a good thing for him. Let him get healthy, and then figure out the roster, in October. Nahshon Wright went on the injured reserve list. Again, I kind of like this, that now you can stash Nahshon Wright if you need him after week 4, after week 5, whenever you need to bring him back. They did put Chuma Edoga back on the 53-man roster, and it seems like people are calling him the swing tackle, which scares me a little bit. So maybe you go out and you see if there's a swing tackle that's available that wants to come in now that training camp is over, like a Jason Peters or a Justin Pugh or whatever. But I got to believe the offensive line is the one spot that the Cowboys are going to continue to dig here.
Yeah, and honestly, I would only imagine it if someone comes and surprises them, because look, I think this is a solid plan, honestly. Like, if Chuma is like healthy enough to play, which I'm assuming he is, if he's not being waived injured, or
he's healthy. I mean, he's on the roster. I think he practiced today.
Yeah, so if he's healthy enough to practice and play, then I think that, look, you've got Awesome Richard as your left side backup, you've got Chuma as your right side backup, you got a swing interior guy, and that's good enough for now, right? For now. Like, if there's another injury on the right side in the next 4 weeks before Waletzko can get back, then maybe you get concerned. But I think that this is good enough for now for them to roll the dice
for the first 4 games of the year.
Yeah.
Well, remember, they also have an early bye week this year. It's either week 5 or week 6. So if you can get to that bye, maybe that's when you reshuffle things and try to figure it out. But I think I kind of like the plan of who they have on the roster right now. And then we'll figure things out once we get some of these guys back from injured reserve.
Yeah, like we said, we know what the backup situation is, right? Like we at least know. Like that's always been the thing coming in. It's like I think we have a clear plan of what the backup situation is if any of these 5 guys get injured. We're not concerned about the starting 5. That's where we feel solid. So I think they're in a good spot, honestly.
Yeah, I would agree. But again, they're going to roster, management is a 365-day year job.
They'll never rest on their laurels.
No, they're going to keep looking. So if somebody better pops up that they can put on the 53-man roster, I wouldn't be surprised if they do that. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every day. Again, everydayers, tomorrow we'll answer your Twitter questions, so make sure that you send them in. Check us out on YouTube. We are free and available on all platforms. Go follow Landon on Twitter @McCoolBCB. I'm @Marcus_Mosier. We'll see you guys next time.